Welcome to Growing Startups, where we talk to growth leaders and marketing professionals about how to drive sustainable growth from the ground up. I'm your host, Evelyn Cools, and I lead marketing for tech startups. I'm excited to share these candid conversations about marketing, culture, collaboration, and everything else that makes startups grow. I'm joined today by a fellow Belgian, Yvan De Munck, and I'm super excited about this conversation because I think there's so much to learn when it comes to European startups making their way to the US. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. Yvan helps European startups hire and build teams in the US as YER USA's Director, European Desk. So before we get into all the great topics that we have planned today, I would love to get a bit of an overview from you about your background and what you're currently doing.
Sure. And first of all, thanks very much, Evelyn, for having me on. Very excited. And first of all, also congratulations on your incorporation. I just read
Thank
that,
you.
you created your corporation, which is really, really exciting. So congrats for that.
This podcast is brought to you by Evelyn Cools Marketing. If you're an early stage B2B tech founder who wants marketing to actually work, you're in the right place. As a fractional head of marketing and growth advisor, I help early stage B2B startups take marketing from 0 to 1 by building the foundations, testing different channels, and scaling what works. I'm currently offering a free strategy call where I do an audit of what you've tried with marketing so far and share practical advice that I believe will make the biggest impact on your growth engine. Visit evelyncools.com to book your free strategy call today. Now back to the episode.
On my end, shortly, I've been in the US for like 25 years, came here from Belgium, actually for a European bank, first for Fortis, but then basically for more than 10 years, I was in the capital markets running a broker-dealer for KBC Securities. So what I was doing there was basically selling European equities to US institutions. After sort of 10 plus years, really sort of got really commoditized, not really my interest anymore. And I said, I want to do something else. And then I got in touch with this new phenomenon after sort of the 2008 crisis with sort of, the issues of access to capital for people, who were looking to get some loans from banks and the banks weren't really lending. And you had this new phenomenon called online lending or peer-to-peer lending. And so I got involved into that and I got the opportunity to join a startup called Eaglewood, where I became sort of employee number one. Really what we wanted to do there was to start the first institutional vehicle that would invest institutional capital into this newly investable asset class. We opened the market there and cut a long story short, the business, we run it like for 2.5 years. Very successfully, we launched the first fund in the industry. We did the first securitization in the industry as well. So we really opened that sort of industry. Today, it's all commoditized, but at the time, it was pretty revolutionary. So it was a good time until the fund then was sold to Marshall Wace in the UK, which is one of the largest asset managers in Europe. And that sort of ended my story there. And then from there, in between some of the things I've done up until today, I've always worked very closely with European startups and scale-ups to basically help them be successful in the US in various sort of iterations. And so I had the opportunity, as I said, in between positions to work with some of these companies as an advisor, as a consultant, until I met two young guys through the Belsham sort of institution that you're very familiar with. I was doing a presentation in New York City on, again, how to grow in the US. And they saw me present two young guys from a company called Crowd Process. And they were actually from Lisbon, Portugal. And they said, wow, this is interesting. We're actually developing a SaaS software. They called it James, gave it a name, was kind of cool at the time. And it was really something that they said, look, we're selling this to lenders and non-bank lenders, fintech lenders to better underwrite credit by using sort of the latest and greatest in AI and machine learning. And again, it was way before AI really was a thing as it is today. They wanted to work with me and see if there was an opportunity to work with them in the US or to find some customers or some first relations, which I did for a year as an advisor. And then after that, I ran the business for 2 years in the US. Again, built the business, met some first clients, first partnerships, first everything. Until then, unfortunately, big tech came by and actually bought out the business. That big tech was Google, but it was really an acqui-hire. So they basically, not a lot of interest in the product. They were interested in sort of buying, sort of 25 smart kids from the Lisbon office for cents on the dollar and then brought them to the New York office. So that's what happened there and ended my role And then after that, again, in between sort of working with some of these startups and scale-ups, I did 3 more years with a company called Informa, which is a FTSE 100 listed company in the UK. And I was working on their business intelligence side in what is called competitive benchmarking. So again, sort of a data analytics kind of play where they wanted somebody who helped them basically market and promote a new product in that competitive benchmarking space, which I did for 3 years until the company basically was JV'd in a 3-way merger with our competitor. And then I had to go through a large restructuring. And again, that opened up some opportunities for me to look at my next step. And then we basically come to what I'm doing right now, which is really very exciting. So I joined a company YER, and they have a division called YER USA, which is obviously the specific US operations. But what we do is it's very simple. It's a recruitment agency, but really focused on, matching the best European companies with the best American talent. And so they've been doing this for 15 years. We're about 70 people in the US. It's very exciting because it allows me to continue to work with what I've always wanted to do and I've always done for the last 25 years is working with exciting European companies in the US and help them grow.
So you've also done it from the ground up, building. I didn't realize this. You've been the first hire. You've
Correct.
basically done all the things that you now help European companies find talent for.
Yeah, and that's why it's so exciting because I'm not just a recruiter. I mean, I haven't had a career in recruitment, right? But I think the biggest problem, one of my taglines is that capital is no longer the problem. Access to talent, that is the problem. So hiring the right talent and keeping the talent, especially in the US, is absolutely critical, especially when you're a younger company or you're starting here or you're scaling here. I've been in the position myself. I have hired, I've been fired, I've seen what the challenges were. But yes, I was always very early stage, first employee, you got a phone and that's it. Go out and grow the business. Not easy. I've seen many companies also, the ones that I've worked with in between, come here and not mostly, but a lot of times, one of the main reasons why some of these companies fail or don't grow fast enough or well enough or soon enough is because they hired the wrong people. And we can, expand on that. But that's really what excites me in the current job is that I'll be able to talk to all these companies now. If they're looking to grow and hire talent, I can help them, with my whole team on doing this much better, but also from an experience, having an experience myself. So look, these are really the things that you have to look out for. And I think that's very exciting.
It is very exciting. And I've also been the first hire at a startup, and it's
Yeah.
a crazy experience. Very, very fun. But you're right. You really need the right person to do that.
Yeah.
So hiring those first 5 to 10 employees
Yeah.
is the biggest thing for your business, right? So I'm curious, the companies that decide to work with you, are they that early stage? Do they maybe have an established business in Europe and now they're looking at bringing on their first person in the US? Are they sometimes a little bit bigger already and they're expanding their team here? What's kind of the sweet spot for you?
It's a double question there. I mean, in general, since we've been around for 15 years, the company really has been working with, all kind of companies. Most of the time, it's sort of the medium-sized companies, the KMOs, as they call them, right, in Belgium or in Flanders. It's sort of that not too big and definitely not early stage or, sort of scale up. Yeah, maybe the larger scale-ups, yes. But that's sort of the sweet spot because once you go very large, then most of these companies do all these things in-house. They have their own departments, and it's difficult to, as an outside firm to go and help them. And if they're too small, then obviously they don't have the resources or don't really see the need yet to work with somebody like us. But everything in between, that's sort of the sweet spot, has been the sweet spot. Now, with me coming, my interest and my background obviously is a lot of the startup and scale-up kind of situation. But the interesting part is that I can do both now, right? I can work obviously on well-established companies that continue to grow and need services like ours, but also at the same time help a lot of these companies, the younger companies, grow in the US from day one. And the reason why today it's very exciting is because not only do I have all these relationships, but also company growth these days can go so much faster with what happens in technology. As you see people, scale to 10 million ARR and 100 million ARR sort of, in a couple of months. It's absolutely nuts. We have never seen something like this before. And so companies will need to grow much faster, much more quickly. And so we'll need to hire real people much faster. And we're there to help. I'm there to help.
Absolutely. It is crazy. The world feels like it's upside down with
Yes.
how much technology is transforming things. And something that I think a lot of European companies, when they come here, do is run the same playbooks, hire the same types of people that they did in Europe, where they were very successful. So, what do you think is the fundamental difference between hiring there versus hiring here? And what should companies think about when they're choosing to expand to the US market?
Well, again, I'll talk my book right now, but definitely it pays for them to associate themselves with experts in the market on how to do it, because it is very different. You would think, oh well, we know how to hire people. Well, yes, you do, but you know how to hire people over there. Over here, it is a different world. It is a very different culture as well. That's again why YER is doing quite well, because we have this niche only working with European companies, because that cultural fit is so important. By the way, in our office, we have like, I think, 13 different nationalities running around. Our headquarters are in Atlanta, but we have offices in DC and New York. We speak in total more than 20 languages. So yeah, and all of us are in Europe like every 2, 3, 4 months, meeting with companies over there as well, and the subsidiaries here. So there's constantly this mix and this affinity for the difference in culture. And that is important, because if you come here and you hire with the same spirit, first of all, Americans are very, in general, much more aggressive in selling themselves well in the US. And so for Europeans, you got to see through that. Right? You got to be careful about it, and you got to know how to handle that. So that's one of the big differences already, because they'll pretty quickly be overwhelmed by a story that somebody tells me, and they say, oh, it's fantastic, it's great, and this is the guy or this is the woman that we need, and we're going to be fantastic. And then a couple of months in, you say, whoa, what happened here? And it's actually a completely wrong person. That's one issue, right? That cultural difference in how people sell themselves here when they apply for a position. The other thing is the different way of the flexibility of the market, right? So here you don't have, and again, it's a big difference on why Europe is in many respects so much behind the developments in the US. It has to do with the sort of the structure of the labor market. So in Europe, hire and fire, it's like, no, it costs a lot. You hire and then you keep people, and you keep them way too long because it costs way too much money to fire them, right? You got to pay them 3 months or 6 months or whatever. Here it's like in the US, everybody's, at will. You hire and fire. You don't have to give a reason. It's okay, there's the door, pack your bag and you're out. And you give them 2 weeks of, notice. And that's just how the way it is. But you got to know that as a European again, because they should fire much faster. If things don't work here, that's the flexibility of this market. It's not the end of the world to have, it's not a nice thing to do, obviously, but if you clearly see that something doesn't work, that you really made the misjudgment, the wrong hire, then you gotta cut it fast and then hire somebody new. So that's another big difference, I think, that again can make or break your progression. Over the last couple of months, as I have re-engaged with a number of the companies I worked with in the past, I've seen a good number of companies that basically didn't make it or didn't come here and had a major disappointment with having been here, having had the wrong hire, kept them way too long, cost a lot of money, and now they're out of money. And they said, well, we had a bad experience, we're going to retreat and we're going to see if in the future we'll go back. But that costs us and it's not only the money, it's also the opportunity cost, right? If you keep somebody for a year, it costs what it costs, but also you lose that year. And again, time to market in this day and age, with everything that's happening in technology, momentum is absolutely critical, much more than before. Compared to 10, 15 years ago, you had some time to build something. Now you don't have time anymore. It has to happen today, tomorrow. It has to go fast, because if you don't, somebody else will do it for you or will be ahead of you. So these are a couple of these differences that I've seen. And so that, again, I try to put into the minds of those companies I'm working with and talking to. So look, you got to move. And if you move, you got to do it well. And it pays to have expert guidance in doing that. Then I'll finish off by saying, I just heard recently, I think it was an article in the Wall Street Journal, that the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, calculated that doing a wrong hire costs you about, I think, was at least $30K per wrong hire. So on average, right? So, okay. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the cost could be.
Absolutely. And you're so right. Everything here moves very fast. Across the board. I think it's just a very fast culture, and definitely the labor market moves fast, and that change of pace is very different from most European countries. So that's a good thing to point out. When you say they hired the wrong person, obviously we can be talking about skills and, hard skills versus soft skills. What do you feel like, is there anything that's a red thread throughout these wrong hires? Is it a culture fit issue? Maybe they actually weren't the right person for the job because they sold themselves in a particular way. Is there anything you're seeing that, oftentimes the wrong person is hired versus the right fit?
It has to do with skills. It also has to do with sometimes there's no fit on the cultural side, really sort of, it's very important, especially earlier on in the company's existence here. If the founder or co-founder or CEO doesn't see eye to eye and don't really sort of gel very well, that's not going to work. That's going to clash pretty soon. I think just in general, also Americans are move around much more. I think the average time that Americans hold a job is like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 years, and then they move. Whereas in Europe, much more the case that people stay with companies much longer, right? So and that's a good thing from a European perspective. I said that's great because there's this longer term engagement and cultural fit. And so it's great. And yeah, that is great. Here it's just like, it's different. People are, again, American talent with European companies, the cultural fit is like, it's maybe not that natural. And so they're much more inclined, if you're not careful and you hired the wrong person, then they jump ship way too fast, right? They see another opportunity that pays, a little bit better. And if they're not 100% happy with what they're doing, they'll jump ship. And it's not the end of the world. It's just how it is here. Whereas in Europe, people will stay with you much longer. They're not going to move because they can make a couple of $1,000s more at company Y, There's much more. So I think that's a difference there.
That's so true. Yeah, I mean, people move even within the year, and the startup world, especially, I think, is even more so like that here.
Yes.
And it's also an exciting thing because you can hire contractors. It's a lot more flexible with the talent that you're looking to bring in. You can start someone and not be working with them in a couple of weeks. So there's a lot more, you can experiment a lot more maybe with your team. So it's good and bad, right? So if you're a company that is looking to come here, what are, maybe they've done something that's very successful in Europe and now they're thinking about, okay, we're sending one person out here or we're hiring one person. Who is that person? What kind of profile are they? Is it like a go-to-market? What kind of skills or background should people be looking for?
Really depends on where you are in sort of the life stage from the company, right? If it's a startup or a scale up, then it is important in the beginning that you have a founder or co-founder come here and show commitment. Also show commitment for the longer term, right? In the US specifically, if you talk to larger companies, you want them to become, your customer. A lot of times, companies will just try you out and they will not easily take a risk on what you're doing unless they know that you're serious as well and that you're here not for just, finding out whether you can find a client in 2 or 3 months and then, if it doesn't work, you go back home, right? No, they want to see commitment. They want to see you take 100% commitment. So a lot of time that means, yes, moving immediately, bring your family over, right? So they know you're going to be here for the next 1, 2, 3 years. That's a big sign of commitment. I always call it sort of, burn your boat kind of strategy, right? You gotta, the US, if you want to be successful, especially again on the sort of the early stage companies, you got to go all out. It's a difference between plan A and plan B. A lot of entrepreneurs in Europe, when they come here, I call them plan B entrepreneurs. It's something that dawned on me. Every time I talk to these founders, then I say, okay, what are your plans? What are you going to do? Where are you funding wise, this and that? And we talk about it. And then I always ask what's going to happen when, what if it doesn't work, right? And then most of the time, all these people have, oh, but it's fine. I can go back to this, or I can do this, or I have already this lined up. So they always have their plan B already lined up, which means to me that it implies that they say, well, there is a big chance that actually doesn't work. And so I'm very smart because I have my plan B ready. If I talk to an American entrepreneur here and I'm asked, okay, if this doesn't work, the eyes are glazing over me. They're looking at me and says, what are you asking me? Says, can you imagine if this does work? And I'm like, yeah, well, then I'm going to be, billionaire, millionaire, this and that, all these kind of things, right? The concept of not being successful doesn't even, apply. They don't have that in the mindset. That's the mindset that sort of, American companies wants to see in an entrepreneur, right? And in a company, just, there's no plan B. Even if there is one, you don't talk about a plan B. This is plan A. This is the only plan that shows commitment, shows all or nothing. That's what people want to see here.
It is a fundamental difference. And I think that's why so many entrepreneurs come to the US because they're looking for that mindset and that momentum as well. And you're right that it's important for founders to come here and show commitment also for those first hires, because I've worked for multiple early stage startups with Belgian founders. And I have to say that the founder's vision is probably the number one thing after, maybe product market fit and all these things that make sense from a marketing perspective. What I really care about is the founder's vision and how they can communicate that. And, they don't have that plan B. This is it. Like, this is what's going to happen. So I think that's a huge thing for founders to remember when they're coming here and hiring people, is you have to sell the dream, because that's how your team stays motivated as well.
Yeah, and you need to have the people around you, the people that you hire, must buy into that dream, right? And must be on board 100%. And if that's not the case, then you're going to have issues. As soon as you're going to have some, bad moments, bad times, things will happen, right? Always. Even in more mature companies, then you still have to be able to say, look, this is still our guiding light. This is still where we're going to go. Yes, we have a difficult moment, but it doesn't mean that you have to run away, right? It doesn't mean that the boat goes under. It's just like, it's a normal cycle. And, as long as we're all aligned on where we want to be in like 3, 5, 7, 10 years, then we should be good.
And then maybe the other side, the more logistical side of things, this is also very different from Europe. When you're thinking about compensation, you're thinking about health benefits, it's probably a big investment as well for founders coming over here for the first time, and a little bit difficult to navigate because it is such a different thing. So what are maybe some things to expect for companies who are thinking about coming here, and how do they need to support their employees, or also use this, like their compensation package, to attract the right talent?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's critical, obviously, and again, talking book here, but that's also what we do at YER, right? We arrange packages, we do salary analysis. It's important that when you hire people, you bring a competitive offer to the table. Now, in general, I would say, as a European company, this is the most competitive market in the world, right? The US. And you see what people get paid, especially sort of everything around AI and whatnot. The country's at full employment. We grow 4% GDP again. I mean, it's very difficult to find talent, right? And so you have to be competitive, but it's going to be rare that as a European company, you're going to be able to offer financial benefits that are better than the US ones. So I always go back, you need to go to some sort of intangibles. And again, that's what we're trying to sell if we work with European companies. We're selling our candidates to the company, right? We have like a short list. We come up like after a couple of weeks with 3 or 4 great candidates, right? Perfect profile. We've interviewed them a couple of times. We go to management of these companies, say, look, these are 3 people. You have your choice, but they're the best of the best. And by the way, we go and pick people from other places, right? It's not that we're hiring people that have been looking for 6 months. We're really, going to find the best people from somewhere else to come and work for you. So what you have to offer then has to be better that they're leaving on the table. And that better is probably not going to be financial. Most of the time, it's going to be other things. And those other things, I truly believe, especially with the younger generation in the US, these are the fringe benefits that increasingly become important. For instance, we talked about work-life balance, right? Especially for the younger generation after COVID, flexibility in the workplace, right? Do you still want to go and have to be in the office 5 days a week, or can you, work remotely at least 2 or 3 days a week? This is one of the things. If that's not the case, then you have an issue, right? Because this younger generation is not going to accept that anymore. Rightfully, wrongfully, I don't know, but that's just how it is. So you got to adjust yourself. Also in terms of, especially today, with everything that's happening around healthcare, for instance, it's a huge thing. I mean, from a European perspective, healthcare benefits is like a basic thing, right? In every single company. Here, it's premium, right? It's rare. A lot of companies don't give you benefits, right? Especially in the earlier stage kind of thing. Or if they give you benefits, it's basic, or it's not nothing compared to what Europeans would provide you. So that package, I think, is very important. Healthcare benefits, right? But also 401k, IRAs, and all these kind of things. An annual sort of trip to Europe to go and see the headquarters, right? And for an American, I think a lot of Americans have never been to Europe, right? For them, that could be a big perk. So yes, once a year we do like a 1 week, all expenses paid company kind of thing where we talk about the goals, but also we have a lot of time to, have fun with the colleagues, all these kind of things. So there's a lot of little things that you can add into your package that I think make it attractive to an American. And again, on sort of the net financial may not be the killer here, but if you add all the other things up, are really things that increasingly this younger generation in particular will appreciate in comparison to the American situation or your typical American company. And then finally, the cultural fit and also the longer term perspective. As a European company, you would hope still that the person that you hire stays with you for as long as possible. Whereas in the US, you get hired, but there's another restructuring coming and 2 months later you may be out the door, and that's just normal business. Whereas on the European side, this definitely is going to be a different kind of thing. Anyway, that's some of my thoughts on the subject.
I love this idea of the fringe benefits because you're right. I think a lot of people I talk to, and even myself, that's sometimes more appealing than a slightly higher salary is what does, my work-life balance look like? Can I work remotely? I mean, even as a European working for a lot of American startups, I love it when they offer things like, team building weeks in a place. And I would love to go to Europe if I was working with a European company to do that. So it's also very cool for Americans to have that connection with another culture and, they get to experience these things. So there is a lot that you can offer outside of the pure like compensation and benefits package.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So I think we've really talked about many different reasons why having on-the-ground support like what YER does makes sense for your European companies coming here. So I'm curious, what does this usually look like when a company comes to you? How maybe does the process look like? Do you interview them first and then, you guys go and do all the headhunting, let's say? Or maybe just logistically, what does that partnership look like?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, but the typical trajectory is it's a process that takes about 8 to 10 weeks in total between the first meeting, which we call then an intake meeting with the client, where we basically sit together, not only with the founder or CEO, whoever's doing the hiring, but also the larger team that is going to be interacting with that candidate or will be working with that candidate. The reason why that intake conversation is so important is that we get really clear on what's the profile of the person that you're looking for, and that we all agree in the different parts of the company that is really the profile that we go to. And that's a conversation could take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. We want to be clear. Once we have that, then what happens in the first 2 weeks, we source between 100 and 200 profiles through all our tools, our networks, software and whatnot, that sort of on the face of it, after a first analysis, fit the profile pretty well. From those, let's say 150 to 200 profiles, and again, it's all within the first 2 weeks, we gonna do like 15 to 20 interviews with the people that, we have selected as the top within those, 150 to 200 profiles. And then a couple of weeks later, after all these interviews, and it may be one or more interviews per person, we come up with a short list, anywhere between 3 to 4 candidates, ideally, that after, I think, 5 to 6 weeks, we'll propose to the company. And then what happens then is that together with the company, we organize interviews between senior management of the company and the 3 or 4 candidates. And then after, 1 or 2 weeks after that, the company decides, sometimes even they decide they were so happy with the profiles that they actually ended up hiring 2 people instead of 1 person. So that happens on occasion. And then we're done, then, candidate gets a job offer letter and, he resigns, and 2 weeks later he starts with the company. And then what happens a lot, obviously, if you start working with a company, it's the new customers. We have quite a bit of repeat business. So, companies are happy to continue to work with us for future hires.
I mean, going back to what you said too about how the labor market moves fast here, that's also a very fast process for finding like the great.
It is. Everything has to go fast, and you think 8 to 10 weeks is long. It's actually not long, right? It's really fast because it's constantly also. The big difference now is that for the first time ever, I really work more. My product is people. Whereas before it was financial products or SaaS software. So now I'm very happy to be able to really work with people as my product, if you want, or my service. And that obviously entails, you get new problems with that, right? Because it's people, so things happen. So you got to constantly chase. You got to organize all these meetings. People may not show up. People may be stuck somewhere. Technology may not work. So it's a lot of pressure to do all these things one after the other. And you want to obviously finish the process as soon as possible, get the best possible quality candidates through the door, vetted, interviewed, proposed to the companies, and then ultimately also get these candidates an offer. Because sometimes if you don't get that offer fast enough, the candidate has something else and he'll move to another company. So it all has to be very tight. And so that's a process in and of itself. And therefore, this is not just me alone. We have a team that does that. So that helps me on the organizational side. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, you do have to be competitive with all the other US companies that are hiring, because you're right.
Yes.
Every other place also moves equally fast. So they're getting the interviews in and pushing candidates through the process. So you're not just, trying to find the perfect person, but also make sure that that person is still available if
Yes.
the company decides they want them, right?
Yes, absolutely. So
Amazing.
no pressure, no pressure.
Yeah. No pressure, no pressure. This is the startup world that we live in, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Yvan. I think this was a very interesting conversation. I like to close the episodes off with taking it back to the guest as well. So what is something that you're currently excited about in both your personal and in your professional life?
Oh boy, I'm
Big
excited every
question.
single day. No, I'm just starting in this new position for 2 months in, so obviously that's a lot of excitement there. My personal life, it's really just building my business within the business here. I think there's a huge opportunity to help grow YER in the US beyond what they've achieved so far. Obviously, I'm very determined to do that. And so very excited to be able to work with a lot of these European companies to help them grow in the US, because that's what I'm all about. So that's my excitement there, which really takes 100% of my time. On the personal side, it's a little bit related to my professional side as well, because as you may know, I have 2 sons and they both work and study overseas. They're both in the Netherlands. So my youngest son is in the second year in college in Eindhoven, and my oldest son is graduated 2 years ago, and he's working as a back-end software engineer for a financial services firm in Amsterdam. And so since I now have the opportunity to go back to Europe on a more regular basis, meeting with all the European companies I work with, I will be able to combine that with a more regular visit to my boys. And so I'm very excited about that on a personal side.
That's amazing. It can be difficult. I understand the feeling of being very separated from my parents. Live in Belgium. My youngest brother, actually just started a job in Amsterdam as well.
There
So
you go.
it is always nice when you can combine work and
Yes.
personal life as well.
Absolutely.
For travel.
So there's a lot of excitement to go around here.
Absolutely. So much. Well, maybe final question.
Mhm.
If someone wants to work with you or with YER USA, what's the best way that they can connect with you?
2 ways they can. I'm very active, obviously, on LinkedIn, pretty much every day there. So they can, connect with me there. I'm looking forward to new connections on a daily basis. But also, otherwise, they can send me an email, and that's Yvan De Munck at YER.com. So it's first and last name at YER, YER.com.
Amazing. And I'll link YER's website as well in the description, as well as your LinkedIn. So
Perfect.
people
Thank
can
you very
find
much,
there.
Evelyn. Lovely.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for being here. I love this conversation, and on to a lot of exciting things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Growing Startups. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to give us a rating so more people can find the show. So happy you're here, and see you in the next one.